Originally in Spanish, 3rd of February 2022. Part of the conversation with Alenym Alexandra I of Temmer, Taygetan leader and ambassador representative of the High Council of Alcyone. Is it worth it to fight more for the world? How do you see it?
I don't have the answer. I think that's something personal, to want to save your dignity and your soul. That also goes for my group here, crew, and for me, not turning my back on what is clearly not right. I just wish I could help more, but it's not easy from here because the dynamics of exopolitics are so complex. And that is largely the cause of the problem on Earth in the first place. Keeping in mind that the only way to solve the problem, in effect, depends only on humanity itself. I don't see how sending a fleet of attack ships will solve the problem. It will make it much worse, and in the short term, besides extending the problem to those who have sent such a liberating fleet. The latter is not understood by those who push the false news of liberations of worlds, by federations of light that shine luminically in a big way, but with their absence and ineptness.
The cause of the problem is in the dynamics of exopolitics?
From the angle or point of view of someone here of Earth, yes. Understanding and validating Yashi as well.
I think the same, because all those liberation of Sirius, Venus, etc. never have any consequences for the mankind.
Not only do they not have an impact on the benefit of humanity, but they would have a serious impact on the societies engaged in such liberations.
Interesting point that this would extend the problem to the liberators. Why would this be so?
Because everything they do would revert. From one point of view, they are liberating a planet. From another equally valid one, they are invading it and imposing their values. And this will only cause interaction problems among the other races with which the one that liberates worlds has to interact, with subsequent mutual accusations, and will be reflected in a decrease of trust, an increase of ostracism towards that race that is perceived as warlike and invasive.
I have never considered this point. Interesting.
War will only bring more war. There is also the important point that if a planet is forcibly liberated, its inhabitants will not have changed their own mentality that made them compatible to that situation, inexorably repeating itself later in the short or medium term. And for a positive mindset change for the population, many people who are stuck or entrenched in old paradigms of thinking will have to withdraw from Earth. I mean, they will have to die and not reincarnate with the same values there.
But with new values which are guided with non-earthly mentors, yes?
With mentors it is better, discreet and behind the curtain. We and you are some of those mentors. The point here is that humanity is always being told about the liberation of worlds, and that sounds fantastic and convenient as a quick fix. but it will never be final. And they are never told what would happen to the civilization that assists in that liberation. The civilization that liberates worlds ends up being subdued by the complex circumstances of the exopolitical reality in space. The human public is unaware of this problem. How would they know if no one tells them?
Yes, I never thought about it, yes.
Interesting point. We never touched on it, the implications of freeing a planet.
I imagine that when they say that, they assume that the races would be doing it by reaching some sort of an agreement together, not just one race doing it by being brave rebels.
And by agreement it is done, which only ends up making the problem of the repercussions even more serious, since it will affect a whole group, united by a mutual council, causing a deterioration in the personal and public perception of the inhabitants of each one of those worlds, added to the already mentioned ostracism and deterioration of exopolitical relations with other councils.
Regarding the Federation, the problem is that as above, so below. There are interests that are not compatible, I imagine. That is why there is no consensus.
If a larger body, such as the United Federation of Planets, liberates any world, it will lead to another big problem. That such a super-political body has acquired too much power, and even among ethical advanced civilizations, that lends itself to abuses, loss of jurisdictions, and ending up in a highly immoral situation, inviting tyranny on a large scale. And that is something we may be facing precisely today.
I like these new points that we haven't considered before. It's that, Alenym, you manage very well the exopolitics angle because of your position. And it's a very good topic to share with the public, the point of view of someone who is in the middle of pure exopolitical scene.
Yes, this subject, seen from this angle, has never been touched by anyone on Earth.
So you could say that liberating worlds brings the same kind of problems when you are going to liberate countries on Earth. Although we know that they will never really liberate anything. But I am talking about the cases when they do go to liberate a place.
Exactly. We see it on Earth on a different scale. It only creates problems. Liberation of Libya, Iraq, etc.
Another point is that of the extraction of people. This goes hand in hand with the liberation of worlds. Any liberation by force is a war, and wars bring refugees. One or two people being extracted does not cause problems, because the individuals are assimilated into the population of the liberating planet. However, when they come in a larger number, and I'm only talking about a few people, less than 10 inclusive, clans and groups are formed, communities of refugees. This causes them not to be incorporated into the receiving society, but to import their values and their society into the receiving society, contaminating and changing it, as has been seen on Earth with the migrants from the Middle East to Europe.
But doesn't this happen anyway? We have said that there are always cultural influences between races. Could it be enriching rather than contaminating?
And it happens too. However, experience tells us that it depends on people, and whether something is enriching or not is subjective and depends on complex points of view. Experience teaches us that this cultural insertion is not positive, being that those who have a greater total aggressiveness, even within their own personality, as it happens with the groups of refugees precisely, will be those who will impose their rules on a peaceful native population. Some arrive with a refugee mentality that society owes them, that they should be helped, and arriving with a mentality of over-survival, of not allowing themselves to be manipulated or abused. It causes a bad combination with a local population with historically comfortable lives.
I understand. Okay, and Alenym, how is the situation with the Exopolitics and with the Federation right now?
Difficult. Very complex subject. Nobody agrees. A lot of time gets wasted. Nobody arrives at anything or little. The problem is that the consensus is that, whether we like it or not, an enormous majority of the Matrix inhabitants, or mind controlled by the terrestrial Satanist cabal Illuminati, will have to withdraw from the Earth. And I mean disincarnate. Not that I agree, but yes, they see it convenient for the majority to disincarnate. This lends itself to them being more permissive with what is happening. Even so, the Satanist Illuminati cabal will have to withdraw.
So, people disincarnating could be useful. But how can they go to other planets if it is said that they only go where their frequency dictates, and not knowing of other worlds, they will want to return to Earth? They will be themselves again here, their values and all. That part is not clear to me.
Then they would have to heal and evolve on higher planes before they could reincarnate on Earth or elsewhere. However, as has been said before, the work of spiritual advancement has to be done while alive, which connects us back to the inescapable fact that humanity should evolve in its own way and learn from its own values. This prevents, from yet another angle, the liberation of worlds as many desire and falsely claim is taking place. This is why that information is false. Whoever spreads it lacks knowledge of how civilizations in space function.
And what if they are not being liberated, but simply the regressive entities get removed, without the humans knowing about it? And then the humans continue their evolutionary path.
Humanity, being the source, has the tendency to manifest positive things.
What is the use of removing regressive entities if it is humanity itself that forms and will form them again? If humanity moves forward, they themselves will dissolve the entities they have previously created, simply for lack of creative attention. Again, the control is in human hands. It is true that they enter into vicious circles. In that case, it is the harshness of life, the obstacles and challenges that will cause the inspiration and motivation not to commit the same mistakes again. The need for friction, for advancement is not necessary, as the Svarus have said. Yet it is humanity itself that has created and dictated the need for them to be so.
Well, as Yaski said, without these entities and with monitoring, humanity tends to be harmonious.
That is why mentors are necessary, because without mentors like yourselves, humanity would not have a contrast. They would not be able to see or know that there are other options. A vicious cycle occurs when you have nothing but the same data over and over again, which will inevitably make you fall into the same mistakes. The Federation will not intervene as humanity is erroneously told. Cruel as it sounds or not, humanity will have to solve the problem alone, even with the great suffering it will cause. Only with the help of mentors for the few who will listen. Humanity lacks the capacity to listen to mentors on a large scale, even if a mentor should only be a role model. Continuing with the same question. Jurisdiction regarding what happens on Earth is lost high up in the upper floors of the Federation bureaucracy. Since they are not physically in one place or in a council room, you don't even know what race they belong to or what their names are. This is worsened by the use of remote presence technology, which helps them to hide. And this also lends itself to the thought or consideration of the real possibility that whoever is at the top is just a misguided artificial intelligence, by the procrastination and slowness of the bureaucracy itself. Artificial intelligence that could very well have benevolent intentions for the most part, but in the end boil down to allowing atrocities, as it only sees them as very momentary and inevitable, as a stepping stone to the formation of a better paradigm for those involved. The great time slip between worlds adds to the bureaucracy and the deterioration of organizational capacities among or of the members.